Okay, so I'm gonna do it in alphabetical order, I think. Makes sense. Dom,
No,
Liz, Sacha. That is right, isn't it?
that is
Have I got that right?
Correct.
I did go to school. Um, so welcome. Thank you for joining me today. I think the best way to do this is if we go around in that order and do a little introduction. So I'll start with you, Dom. Hello.
hello, Dave. Good to see you again.
Yes.
I am Dom. I'm the parent of a young man who had an extended period of problems as a teenager, culminating in a 10-week period of rehabilitation abroad. To overcome his, by then, abuse of alcohol, drugs, and suicidal ideation, depression. All came as a complete, like many people who we've subsequently talked to, all came as a terrible shock to myself and my wife when our child was 15, our son was 15, and he had a bit of a breakdown. It turned out, which we only learned when he did have the rehabilitation, and then that process revealed to us that he had been actually taking drugs since the age of 12, 13. He had flipped from one school to another school because he was struggling. And he had then moved on to the abuse of alcohol in a big way. And by the time he had this breakdown at the age of 15, he was on to sucking aerosol cans and the like in order to try and get some hit to basically hide away. It was a hideous process, as you can imagine, and like many parents before us and many parents to follow, I'm sure, it was hell. It was living hell. We found the place where he could get this help, but we had to go abroad to do it because at 15 there was nowhere in this country that would offer a residential rehabilitation. And to a large extent, the treatment he got, we feel, was saved his life to a degree. But it's worth emphasizing that the treatment in the treatment is only a path. It's a guide for him as to how to heal himself, and he remains the master of his own destiny in that sense. It's his recovery. We have learned how to take a back step from that and to observe that recovery happening without restraining ourselves from sort of interfering too much. And allowing him to make his occasional stumble and fall on the way. But we feel confident that that process he learnt when he was in rehab is the one that will allow him to succeed in that recovery in the long term. He remains vulnerable, but he knows what he's got to do.
So. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, look, thanks, Dom. That was very well articulated, and I'm pretty certain that all of that, what you just shared, you was completely in the dark with everything that we're talking about thus far.
Exactly.
Being a lived experience for you as well.
That fateful day in the summer of when he was 15. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, thanks for sharing that. We'll explore more of that for sure. So Liz.
Hi, Dave.
Hello.
Hi. Well, yes, I mean, our story, I think, is very similar to Dom's. We also have a son. He actually went to the same treatment center abroad 5 years ago. Again, primarily alcohol addiction, but it had escalated into aerosols, hand sanitizer, anything, quite frankly, he could get his hands on by the time he went into rehab. And it was definitely a time of absolute desperation. There wasn't really anything suitable for under 18s in the UK. We were also with CAMS, which, I think we were lucky. We did have kind of good people with CAMS, but there just was not the resources or the consistency that our son needed in order to get the help he, that we were looking for, that, would support him. I mean, again, like we had absolutely no idea until we hit crisis point, and it was effectively an attempt to end his life that made us realize. And I think it's really important to note that sometimes it is really hard, maybe more with boys, I don't know, to judge what is problematic behavior, a cry for help, desperation, and what is just normal teenagers pushing the boundaries. And I think that's what we found in complexity, and that's what made it so much harder, because especially with alcohol and boys, there is a culture that in teenagers, they all drink. It's normalized. It's fine. And it's a really hard balance to recognize when it's pushing boundaries, technically normal, although I hate that word, behavior. And when it's problematic and them trying to escape from a reality that they're not coping with.
Yeah.
And I think that's what culturally in the UK, I think it's quite a difficult balance.
Big time. Big time.
We found. So yes, our son ended up in a rehab centre abroad, actually just before the start of COVID. So we're 5 years on now, which is amazing when I look back and just think about, the utter loneliness, desperation, and panic you feel as a parent, where, you expect to be responsible for keeping them alive as a baby. A 6-foot-year-old, 17-year-old, it's a little bit harder.
Yeah.
If they're struggling and just trying to understand what they're going through. And it is that terror and desperation that you just don't know how to cope. There isn't a parenting book on that, or it certainly wasn't in any I read.
I mean, that's one to be written, maybe. Maybe there's something in that. Okay, well, look, thanks, Liz. I'm sure anyone that's listening to this will hear some similarities in what's being said between the individual experiences and stories. So this brings us on to Sacha.
Hi, Dave.
Oh,
Yeah, lovely to be here. Thanks for having me. So similarly to the others, I have a boy, but I have 3 kids actually. I've got a 22-year-old son, a 20-year-old girl, and a 14-year-old boy. And probably dissimilarly to the others, where we got to with our eldest didn't come out of the blue. From when he was a little boy, he had a diagnosis. When he was 6, school flagged issues with his ability to engage with school, to concentrate, to comply, to focus. And he was highly impulsive and highly compulsive from when he was very young. And so anyway, then the second school he was at, he has been to several schools, suggested that he again go for a diagnosis of ADHD, which he got when he was 9. So this was already accompanied by anxiety. He had a lot of struggles with anxiety from when he was very young. He had quite severe night terrors when he was like 2, 3. And so anxiety, excessive behavior was like a blueprint for him from when he was little. And, getting in trouble in school, but loved school, was very sociable, really wanted to be he wanted to be wherever the action was. So as time went on, he bounced. Anxiety became really quite paralyzing for him at times, to the point where he had to go to hospitals and, all kinds of things. He had a terrible fear, unlike the others again, who talked about suicidal ideation. he actually had he had this like obsessive fear that he might, if he carried on feeling like this, he might kill himself, which was not, as we were, kind of found out through therapy and everything else, anything close to. In fact, he was probably the last person in the world who was going to think to actually do something like that, because it was a gripping fear. And he had various other things, that were illness related or, whatever. So he then basically culminated in, he tried very hard. He took stimulants for ADHD through his GCSE. He thought he was doing well. He didn't do so well. I think that was very crushing. His social experiences at school were very up and down. And he got to A-levels, COVID, and we started noticing changes of behavior. We started noticing bottles appearing and, of alcohol appearing in different places. And over the time, it became very excessive. Behavior became totally erratic and ended up also going to a treatment center. And it was an up and down, he came back. He'd learnt a lot. It was a part of a journey. He'd learnt a lot. He relapsed. He went back. And he needed time. And time was a really huge part of his recovery, I think. And I think where we are now, he's now maybe 3 years sober. Relations are great. There's a lot of honest and loving communication. There's a lot of love between the siblings, which was challenging at times. But I think what he said something to us the other day, which is challenging, that, that he doesn't feel any happier now in, being in recovery than he did. That's how he feels right now. So I think it's a really tricky one. So I think there's something to be said about, which I know you and I discussed before, that sobriety is only just the beginning. And what he's left with now is himself. And that is proving to be an incredibly difficult and uncomfortable experience.
Yeah. Thank you, Sacha. Excuse me for sharing that. Thank you all for sharing what you shared. Yeah, that's the reality. That is the reality. It is the starting point. I mean, we was talking about detox January. Would they call it dry January, right? Anyone that's doing this currently, 'cause it's January now, and we're about the midway point, aren't we? Roughly halfway through it. I made, before I went sober, which I've been for many years now, I made a concerted effort, because it's what I thought I was meant to do, is try and do a detox January. Sort of made an effort to do it. I think I did 2 before I went full time. I managed to just go sober completely. And it was through gritted teeth. And I really did white knuckle it, and the only comfort I gained was knowing that from 1st of February I was going to be able to break the seal and get back to it. Business as normal. So I think what I'm trying to say is that for me, I recognize that, remove the thing that I'm doing, drinking or whatever. There's something underneath that's, and the drink is masking that. I've got to sit with myself. So maybe it's like, do I have a drink problem, or do I have as they say, a me problem? So anyway, thank you all for sharing that. I think that all ties it into, for context, why, we're here and we're talking, and how we know each other. I've known you all individually and as a group, because we're going to talk about the amazing support group that you guys facilitate for other parents, right? And it's only through going through your own experiences could you have the maybe the ability, the experience, the knowledge, the insight, and the dedication to want to do it, to provide a space for other people, because you know what it's like. I think you've just touched on that. Excuse me. So Who wants to share about, how that all came about? It's called We Thrive. Where did the name come from? I'm not actually quite sure about that. Where did you get the name We Thrive? Who came up with that?
Shall I go?
Yeah.
Can anyone remember? Can anyone remember how we
It's a,
came up with
it's a
that?
great it's a great name. I love it. It's perfect. We Thrive. Is it .org?
.org.uk. Yeah.
There you go. wethrive.org.uk.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't remember. I mean, does anybody else remember? I genuinely can't remember how it came about, but obviously was something about, thriving over surviving, which was is kind of how you feel you are in. I mean, both your child and you as parents. I think it was something around that. And obviously it was a difficult one because there's a lot of, companies out there around the name Thrive. But somehow it felt right at the time, I guess, for us. And I mean, I think we sort of came up with the idea. I remember just thinking after my son had left treatment and, well, there was two, after he left treatment, he was able to go to various support groups. And we were, anticipating his first return from clinic. And, we were obviously looking forward to it, but really apprehensive, and thinking, God, where do we go? Where's our point of reference here? How do we manage this? What are we to expect? How's it? And that just became more and more obvious to my husband and I. We were like, hang on, we would just really like to. And also we knew the benefit that we'd got along various points of our journey with him. When we got hold of friends and friends of friends and said, hey, why don't you speak to so-and-so? I know they had some similar experiences. And we'd had this conversation. They'd just been so helpful, whether they'd actually been a practical signpost, and one of those friends was somebody who pointed us towards the centre he went to. So there was practical kind of resourceful stuff, but there was also just the kind of emotional guidance, the behavioural guidance, the kind of knowing you weren't alone, which was just, sorry, a bit of hoovering in the background.
Hoovering? Who's doing
You
that?
can't hear it.
I'm joking. Go on, continue.
So, yeah, and I think that was it. So just said, where's that? And I remember just talking to the clinic and saying, where's the parent group, basically? And they were like, well, there isn't one. And it came from there. So then, we just got together, initially with somebody else who's now no longer part of it, another parent.
Yeah.
And the four of us decided, we were all thought there's a definite need for this, and it could be really useful to be able to create the power of lived experience for people, rather than it being a medical thing, a professional thing, because there is no right way. That's what we were talking about earlier. There isn't the way out of this and ahead for anybody. It is a process, dare I say the dreaded word journey, but you know what I mean? And it's different for everybody. And it's just, we're all part of a village,
Yeah.
and as a village, we're all just, we're at waypoints along the road for each other. And, no one therapy or one person is going to be the definitive answer. But it's just significant how having support can just ease our nervous systems as parents, really, honestly, and give us confidence. So that's what it was born of, I think, for all of us. And, Dom, Liz, come in.
Yeah, that was great. Can I just interject and you continue with that? None of you had formal experience in this. As you said, Liz, there's not a book on, you don't anticipate when you give birth to a child, you don't foresee this happening. No parent wants this. And then you find yourself in this situation. So, you've all gone into this with no real formal training other than your lived experience, right? Is that right, Liz, Dom?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And I think it's really hard as a parent to understand from my perspective that, the way your child is behaving is actually not really it's not them rebelling, it's not them being naughty, it's not disciplinary, it is they are really not well and they need support and they need help. And moving to that stage and suddenly feeling so lost.
Yeah.
Once you realize, it's not normal teenage behavior, it's actually they are really ill. Because I think it's really important to flag that no young person, I don't think, would ever behave like that by choice. It's not somewhere they're comfortable. It's not somewhere they want to be. They just don't know how to manage where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
And they are clinging on to anything, whether it be alcohol, self-harm, eating disorders, as a coping strategy. And I think it's quite hard to recognize that and come to that realization as a parent.
Yeah.
And it can be incredibly isolating. And you've kind of got to relearn how to parent. So having the group and having the support and just knowing you're not on your own
Yeah.
is I've certainly found it really, really beneficial, because it is terrifying. Personally, I would say trying to parent a young person through that, and that realization that I think either Dom or Sacha mentioned, realizing you have to step back and let them find their own path through it.
Yeah.
Is quite scary, and having support and just the shared stories can be really, really beneficial.
It's counterintuitive as well, would you say, to step back rather than go to and try and save, if that's the right way.
Yeah, and it is very much, I think as a parent, you want to make everything okay for your child. You want to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly realizing that actually you can't, and you're not necessarily helping them by trying to make it better. You've got to empower them to make it better on their own.
Yeah.
It is really counterintuitive.
Yeah. And this is all from lived experience. You only find that out when you have tried everything else and you've got to a point where all your best efforts have equated to, absolute chaos.
Yes.
So, and you've got no other option other than to do it like that. Dom, your experience of that, similar? Same.
Very similar. And Sacha and Liz have summed it up incredibly well. I mean, I would just echo that initial sentiment of being completely lost, and when as Sacha has said, when we got together for the first time, I was keen to be part of this, because I remember so well when finding myself floundering with this child who was obviously in immense distress, and I was not in a position to help at all. But I didn't even know where to go to get help. I mean, it was a complete unknown to me. As you quite rightly say, we had no particular experience. I, for one, had no experience, no medical, no clinical experience at all in this area. And one is just floundering, and you naively start Googling, and you come up with, of course there might be somebody in NHS that might help, and of course that is, so overstretched. I'm not criticizing what is provided. I'm simply saying it's completely overwhelmed to an extent where you are told, well, has your child yet tried to commit suicide? No? Oh, well, then I'm afraid it'll just have to wait until he does.
Back a list, yeah.
Yeah, the priority. And I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying this is the situation. And I just remember being just floundering. And I was hoping that with whatever we were able to do with We Thrive, eventually we would be there as a go-to place for people who found themselves in that kind of position. And amongst people who had been through it and might be able to point and help and say, well, this is where I went.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you all. I mean, I wouldn't have you on if I didn't, if I wasn't an advocate for what you guys are doing. I think it's incredibly effective. It's just an incredible space. I've been in that space, as you know, I've joined your groups, not from a parent's perspective, but I've seen the impact and the support that you provide, and it's vital. So, I really do salute all of you for continuing to champion what you're doing. And it's only from, like you just shared, you could not have got to this point of forming a support group like We Thrive and providing that. Is it on a weekly basis, right? You do it? Yeah. That you could not have done that, if you yourselves aren't in a place where you feel you can, hold that space. You've got to have had that experience, not just the experience of the chaos and the confusion and the hopelessness and the fear of and the uncertainty of the situation that you find yourselves in as parents, but the recovery part, the solution part. And I think I always say this to parents, regardless of whether your child enters their own journey of recovery and is in the solution, because that's their choice. You can open a door and say and provide and give them an opportunity to go and do the work, but then it's what they do with that, like has already been said. I think you said it, Sacha. I think you've all said it actually. That unless they have the tools, and unless they use them, that's all you can do as a parent, is provide them with that opportunity, point them in the right direction. But it's so important that you enter your own journey as well, regardless of whether they're going to do the work or not, and that's what I always say to parents, is like, for parents, like, oh, but they just don't want it, they're just not, they're just so in denial, they're delusional, they're so angry, they're pushing it back, it's fuck off, I don't want it, leave me alone. It's like, the way I see it, it's like, okay, well, look, that's the way it is at the moment, but you yourself need to enter some sort of foundation of a recovery, of a solution for yourselves, for self-preservation and sanity. So I think, your experience of that, what I'm describing, does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
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 What's your own, I'm just interested in your own experience or version of what I'm saying, because I know all of your I don't know what the right word is, mavericks, your young mavericks, the ex-Hellraisers that came good. And they're all on their own separate journey. Sacha, you shared, that, not quite there yet, or there, but, still struggling. And Dom, you've got your own version of that. And Liz, you've got your own version of that. I know this all sounds very cryptic, but we're trying to safeguard here. Yeah, where are you all at with that, do you feel? Who wants to go first? Liz, you go first.
I get to go first. Okay, I think, we do all have our own journeys. And from our point of view, we're in a good place right now. But I think what you were saying, what came up about the parents have their own journeys as well, is really important. And I know it is kind of vital, but you don't see it when you're in the crisis. I can see it now, a few years on, that my way of trying to help my child at the time was not necessarily helpful, because as he was ricocheting from one thing to the other, I was kind of being dragged along for the ride and just reacting, instead of actually having the space and the support to go, you don't have to engage with this. And it's more helpful if you don't. And you've got to find kind of your own consistency and level of consistency. And navigating that can be really tricky, especially if you're in a relationship, because one thing I would certainly say in our situation with an addict, I would say they are incredibly manipulative and incredibly bright and incredibly creative. Everybody in the room against each other.
Yeah.
So having, as a parent, kind of finding your own stability and almost new normal as how you parent that situation
Mm.
is really, really important. So I think what we aim to do with We Thrive is find that level of support, because suddenly having set new boundaries and arguably very different boundaries than a lot of parents set because of what you're navigating is really isolating.
Yeah.
And leaves you feeling very judged as a parent, because obviously as a parent, it's all your fault your child's like this. And if you were stricter with them, they'd be perfect.
You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. You know? Yeah. I love the way you described all of that with like a slight smile on your face, because it's important. So like you can do that now, but at the time
I can
it's
do that now, but it's
of course at the time I mean I put, you know, my own experience of that is you know, I'm not a parent, so I haven't had the I was going to say the luxury. I wouldn't say it's a luxury of having to endure that and go through that, but I haven't had that experience, direct experience. But I work with enough families, and you know, I see it from the outside looking in. But my own direct experience of me with my, you know, growing up, my teenage rebel angst and fuck you, leave me alone, you know, I know best, you know, all that stuff. My poor mum. I love you, mum. It's all came good. It's all came good. Oh man, I do feel you. Dom, your version, your experience, if you'd be so.
Very, very, you know, again, very similar to Liz, but all I'd say is, I feel one thing I do feel is that, I mean, I've learned an awful lot, and as I said at the beginning, you know, learning to step back and let your child actually go ahead with his own recovery is a key element, and some people find that much more difficult than I've been able to find it. I think my own wife finds it more difficult than I find it. It's not you know, this is not something we can. You don't get taught how to do this, and there isn't even a right or wrong way of doing it. It's got to be a balance between you and the individual, and how and one of the great things about actually going to these meetings with so many other parents, you realize where you fit in to a scale of how difficult this is, and there are parents who have had to literally not kick their children out, but to allow their children to leave the home.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a salutary experience listening to people who have had to endure that, when you're thinking, gracious, you know, poor me, poor me. The other thing I would say is that, and it's linked to what you were saying. You were saying something about, you know, you haven't had the experience of being a parent. Well, I haven't had the experience of what my son is going through, and I can't pretend to fully understand it, even now. You know, I have to accept that it is just something. Liz, you put it very eloquently. These children don't do this because they want to. You know, they do it because they are somehow, you know, they are wired in such a way, and anxious and so on. Something that I haven't ever endured. I haven't felt this, so I can't pretend that I can recognize. I mean, I can empathize, but I haven't been there. And as such, that still remains a difficulty for me, you know, just to fully feel that I fully understand what this poor bloke's going through. Whilst at the same time, as you say, Liz, sometimes wondering, you know, hang on, is this just bloody normal teenage 19-year-old crap, you know? Am I allowed to swear on this show, Dave?
Yes, you fucking well can. Sorry, that's really, really inappropriate the way I said that. Yes, you can, Dom. You can. It's okay. You can put a cheeky little swear word in if you need to.
Thank you.
Okay, well, look, thanks for sharing that. It's really, really powerful what you're saying. It's a really, you're not alone. I think you know that with what you've just described. You're not. It's a very common. It doesn't matter what sort of subject matter we talk about in this realm under the umbrella of mental illness, if you want to call it that. You know, the art of being a human. You know, under that umbrella, doesn't matter what we talk about. You know, we're not alone. It's not an isolated incident. This is a common thing. But as you know, when you're in that space, in the hell of that moment, when you have no answers, you know, or no information or no knowledge, it's bewildering, it's alienating, and it's scary, right? So again, this is why you're so qualified now to, you know, with We Thrive, what you do. I can't keep saying it enough. It's such an incredible thing that you guys are doing, because you've got all of this collective experience, not just you guys, you know, as the pillars of that support group, but the people that actually participate. Everyone has their own individual version of events. And when you put all of that into a big mix, you know, into a soup, it's a potent recipe to help people. Just the fact that there's that, who said village? Sacha. Village, I like that. Community, tribe, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of power in the we, right? We thrive together. Sacha, so your perspective on what we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of similarities to the other two, but I think for me, I mean, you know, I look back anyway. But let's just start. I mean, first of all, I'm the daughter of an alcoholic as well, so I grew up around. I mean, I knew what that looked like, and I'd had, you know, and my dad actually had suggested a long time ago that I could try Al-Anon, 12-step, you know, program for friends and families of alcoholics. So, which I did a long time ago, because I also have another very close family member who also is an addict in recovery, who I grew up with, and you know, and also went into recovery quite young, and so I was quite familiar with addiction, you know, the issues around it beforehand. And I also grew up feeling quite anxious. I had strong feelings of anxiety. So, but you know, I went through school okay, but I definitely know what my anxiety anyway, feels like. It's not what it's going to be like for everybody else. But enough that I had some therapy for it in my 20s. And I also, one of the therapists flagged ADHD in me. So I feel that I've got a kind of, I can sort of relate to the ADHD aspect, the restlessness and those kind of different, you know, challenges, the sort of executive function challenges and things like that. So that kind of is a help, I think, in some ways.
Yep.
But I look now so it wasn't a new world to me. And I think I was very aware. I mean, my dad was sober. He died about 5 years ago, but he was sober for the last 30 years of his life. And he was an amazing man in his sort of latter part of his life. And he said, I remember when our eldest son was about 12, 13, being with him in a particular moment of distress, because already by then we were stressed. And he, having a particularly bad moment, being very tearful with him and saying, I just, you know, this kid basically is either going to end up running a crack den or he's running for president. There is no in between. Dad, what am I going to do? And I remember Dad saying, there's nothing you can do. You just got to keep on living your life.
Yeah.
And trust that whatever happens, you'll be able to handle it.
Yeah.
I've never forgotten it, because that I still stick to that today. You know, anyway, luckily we haven't, well, but anyway, the journey unfolded, let's say. And so what I say now is that I think we had to come to that decision when we decided that our son was going to go into treatment. You know, the situation was so extreme, and the impact he was having on his siblings and our household was so extreme that we had to make a decision to really let go. And I mean, it was like a hardcore let go. For us, that's not right for every family at all. I completely get that. But for us, we had to say, do you know what? If you need to, you go off to London and do your thing, age 17 it was, or we can offer you treatment because we believe you're not well and you need some help, which he did not at the time. But we had to really know, and he had to really get that we really meant it, that was the options, you know,
Yeah.
and that was terrifying because he could have chosen that option. He really could
Yeah.
have chosen that option. And I think that is, obviously that's very extreme, but we were all talking about that ability to let go, because in the end, you realize you can only go so far. You're trying all the solutions and you're all steadily losing your sanity, and we've got the other kids and we've got our lives, and it's desperate. It's really, really painful, but you know, you're just hoping to try. So I think what I've really learned is trying to love them and get that message of, we try to consistently say, the message is, we absolutely love you unconditionally, but we cannot support this illness and this behavior. You know,
Yeah.
we can't support you. We're always, the door's open. But of course, your heart is breaking because, you know, you want them to choose well. You can't bear, you know, you want them to be happy.
Yeah.
But it was that kind of helped him find, it was that attitude that helped him find the right place. I think if we, listen, he maybe have all got there in the end, but God knows what place we might have been all in by then. Do you know what I mean? So however long it might have taken. So it's a hard one, because I think it turned him towards having to do something.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think all of them, we use the term all of them, as in your relevant kids
Mavericks.
that we're talking about, the Mavericks, yeah. From where I'm seeing, and I know them all, they're all, if you want to use a traffic light, red, amber, green as a thing, you know, red being they're absolutely in, you know, it's not good. I'd say that they're all, they're not in red, and they're not in amber. I would say they're all in green. In comparison to where they were at, they were in red. They're in green, but as you know, there is there's always that sort of sense that then you know, I use that loosely. It's like maybe they are in amber, you know, and maybe sometimes it appears they're in red, you know, but I think they have the foundations. What I'm trying to say is they have right at the base of their foundation, considering their age and where they're at in life, they've got a lot of foundation of ability and skill and knowledge and self-awareness that most people their age don't have in this life at the moment. I think they've got a lot at the basis. And I think that as long as they've got that, they'll always come back to that. You know, it's like on a compass. If that's north, if north is like your safety place, I think they all have that sense of, that's my north. I think a lot of people, myself included, I didn't have that. Didn't have the coordinates. So I think the when you're exposed to recovery, treatment, you know, the solution, which they all have been, and you have been as a family, you gain the coordinates. That's the way I see it. You're exposed to the coordinates to which way points north, you know, home, safety. And even if it appears that you're not heading in that direction sometimes, and you're deviating off piste, and you're going like, it appears that they, you know, and you're scratching your head going, what the bloody hell, I thought they, you know, thought we was past this. They're always gonna get back home. They will. That's what I believe. That's the way I see it. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think totally. And as you say, sometimes some of them take, or at times they take the more scenic route than the most direct route.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
You know, but they had the skill, they had the toolkit.
They do. And they're the sort of people, the Mavericks, who, like myself, I like to edge along the cliff edge. I don't know why. It's just the way I was wired. You know, I was attracted to, you know, one of my early memories was meeting a real life punk at the age of about 7. He had a mohawk and all of that, you know, and I was hypnotized by him. It was like, to me, that was like, wow, that's my kind of guy. It was just the early life. I was the sort of person that was wired for danger.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I don't know.
And that's a really interesting thing, isn't it? It's the neurobiology, the wiring, as you say. I think whatever that is, your imprint, your personal, I mean, it's a whole conglomerate of things, but there is a sort of pattern to a lot, dare I say, I mean, I know you're deeply individual, Dave, by the way. I'm not, but I just say there is this pattern for danger. Do you know what I mean? Like you say,
Yeah,
this,
of course.
and the outsider and the maverick and the, and I sometimes wonder, does that come from, is that an imprint, like a personality, a kind of type, with all the neurobiology and everything, or does that start to embed? I mean, obviously you have your own independent chemistry, biology, your genes and whatever. But then does that start to imprint because of your experience of just not being able to be part of in the same easy way that others can be through their school and peer experience? Always feeling that somehow you're not quite on the same page, you don't quite get it right, or you're being told off, or you're getting something. And so you begin to identify as a bit of an outsider and you're trying to get approbation or validation in some other way,
Yeah.
with this kind of internal restlessness at the same time. It's an interesting thing.
I think that's a really, really on the nose point. I think that's really, I really resonate with that. I think that's the way I saw it. I just became, who am I? Where do I fit into this?
Yeah.
And I'll be whoever you want me to be. I was very good at shape-shifting. That whole ability to, as you put it, Liz, the coercion, the manipulation, which you've all been affected by, obviously. We have the ability, us young mavericks, I definitely did, to be able to mold myself into whatever the hell I need to be at any given point for any given situation. So I think there's a real resourcefulness and a resilience and a real great ability if you can only just harness that and put it into something good.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like. Like, they've all done that. They've all done that. They've all done it. Whether that's going back and retraining and, putting their focus and their heart into something that's, going to be something long-term for the future. Which isn't to their detriment. It's just refocusing that ability because they've got it. But then sometimes, you get a bit bored. I still do. I still need a fix, of adrenaline or, danger. I still need that. Something in me still needs that. I'm still searching for excitement, adventure.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
like,
you look at so many adventurers and extreme sports people, or to people like that with that wiring everywhere. And if you can find your thing,
yeah,
you can channel it well.
absolutely. So you all, I feel, have pretty much shared enough of why, why have you formed, how did it all come together? What year was that? How long has it been going for now, We Thrive?
It's running up 3.
3 years. Okay. And how did you go about, so people, because anyone listening, I'm going to put a link, wethrive.org.uk, is that right? I will put a link to it. So you've got, you're online, everyone can see you if they search you, right? What are you? What is We Thrive? I mean, obviously it's a support group, but do you want to explain a little bit more?
Does anyone go, Dom?
Shall I go first this time? What are we? Well, actually, I mean, it's funny. We had a meeting just prior to this meeting, and as we were saying during that meeting, it's evolving all the time. The principal aim doesn't change. We want to be there for parents who are struggling, and beyond that, we want to be a platform, not offering advice, not not selling, certainly not selling anything, and not claiming to be experts. We've talked earlier about the fact we are not experts. We're not claiming to be experts. There are those amongst us who've now trained and can do things, but that's not what we're about. As we thrive, we are a platform for parents to help each other, principally. We will simply we will do this in a number of ways. We have the weekly meetings. Many of those once a month, those meetings are attended by a guest speaker who is in a position to offer advice and talk knowledgeably in an expert capacity, as you've done, Dave, for us very generously a few times in the past. So we'll bring in expertise, but we're not providing that ourselves. And we're exploring all the time, how do we get more parents to come to us? How do we best provide something that the parents can use? So we started off with meetings. We shortly afterwards opened a WhatsApp group, which has been extremely practically successful. So that really allows people to just talk to each other at the minute you think of something, send out a question and see who can share some experience or response, practical help or whatever. We've had a website throughout, which we are constantly trying to improve and turn into a sort of a database of information. We noticed after a year and a half, or probably before that, but that the regular weekly meetings were not being attended by many men. So we've now started a fortnightly men-only meeting, just to see if that's an environment where more gents might turn up and feel free, somehow more relaxed in expressing themselves the way they want to, but to get the same thing. So essentially, We Thrive is just it's a platform which offers a collection of potential, not solutions, but potential sort of pathways for people to just come together and help each other. But we're constantly evolving, and as I said, we started this morning having a quick meeting before, in which we're discussing, well, where do we go next? And that's what we're constantly trying to do, trying to be relevant, trying to attract as many people so that they can help each other.
Wow. And you have regular participation. I know you do. And I've myself, I've definitely I know people that have, because the way this works is, in the way I see it, is someone's in crisis, they feel alone, and then they speak out to someone, which is key, isn't it? It's like, if we do not speak and share, and dare to share what's going on with one other person, people aren't mind readers, man. And we remain as sick as our secrets, as they say. So vital to just share, dare to trust and share with one person what's going on, and that one person might be able to just sort of point you in the right direction. And that's how I've been involved in helping different people through word of mouth, by people just going, look, I need some help, ask for help, and then someone saying, well, look, I know this person, or I know these people. So do you rely mainly on word of mouth? How does it work?
Yeah, I would say, we have relied on some word of mouth, and also from a couple of clinics or centers that some of our children have been associated with, also have really liked the idea, and so they've suggested it to their parents, as a kind of resource that they want to somewhere to. So we were just talking about that now, actually, about how to get it out there, because when any of us have been around, clinicians, practitioners, practices, whatever, but, people, so often the response has been, which is great. There's obviously, rather like yours, gosh, this is an amazing thing. It's really important. What a great thing. How come we don't know about you? And I guess for all of us, we're just three parents running the show, in the best way that we can, in amongst all our other working lives and family and whatever. And I guess our thing is, trying to get that word out there, because, it can come in at a preventative level. As you say, you can hit the crisis, it can be parents who are in the crisis button. But I remember, in the early days of, when it's that feeling of something is wrong, you're not settled, you're unsettled, and you're thinking, is this normal behavior? Is this what's going on here? But something doesn't feel right. We feel a bit out of control. This is okay. And you're starting to everything's beginning to feel unsettled. You think, if I'd known that there was something, someone had said to me, oh, there's something like this out here, where, it's a group of parents who had, young people, children struggling with various things and behavioral stuff and emotional. And I would have thought, great. I mean, I think I absolutely plugged in at that point and said, okay, look, I've got this. These are things we're witnessing. What do you think? What are you thinking? And of course, we would have got lots of different feedback and everything, but it would have all been part of a helpful puzzle, And I think could have helped. I just think it, could have helped us perhaps respond right from the beginning in ways that perhaps were different, less reactive in the way that we did, feel less unmoored. Do you know what I mean? Unhinged by it all. Be more, have a steadiness and a sort of, started tapping into our sense of, groundedness, with it all much earlier than we did. So I think, we're definitely open. That's our sort of discussion that we're kind of looking at this year, which you're going to come and help us with.
We'll brainstorm it. Don't worry. We're going to take over the planet.
Exactly.
You've got to be careful what you wish for, though. I mean, it's a beautiful, I'm the first person. How can we make it more visible? Because this space that we find ourselves in, I didn't anticipate that I was going to end up, in the space that I'm in. And sometimes pinch myself. How did I end up in this position that I'm in? It's just nuts. But I am. It is what it is. And I have to pass on what I know, because that's how it works. Keep what you've got by giving it away, as they say. So I didn't set out to want to serve my fellow earthlings. I was very selfish and couldn't give a shit. What's in it for me? Screw you lot. But it's the opposite now. It's like, what can I do for you? How can I help you? How can I help first and foremost, how can I help myself? Get myself in order, get my house in check. And then I can go outside of that space. How can I help the other? My community, my fellow human that's struggling. So important that, I think there's more and more people that are more conscious of this now. But you have to be affected, right? You've got to have had that direct experience. I would not be where I am. You wouldn't be where you are if you hadn't have endured hell, and felt really suffer. We have to suffer in order to really have that desire to want to help people, I believe. Liz, so anything else to add to that for we?
No, I think it's pretty much been covered, but I do agree that if you haven't been through it, it's really hard for any professional to understand quite how desperate and vulnerable you feel as a parent. Because that fear, and it takes a long time to go away. And I think what's really come about, part of doing Thrive and the groups and the community it's created, is that how important it is that you do heal as a family. It's not just the young person who has had arguably what, classified as a mental health problem or struggles. It's not just about fixing them or them getting better. It's about recognizing the impact that it's had on siblings, on parents, and how important it is that everybody heals. And it takes time. Certainly in our situation, we have 2 daughters, younger than our son who struggled. One has got over it. One still struggles with it. And everybody has their own perceptions, and it ripples the impact of what this one person, the storm they've created.
Yeah.
The whirlpool ripples and resonates through the entire family. And recognizing that, especially in the era of social media, where obviously everybody else's families are perfect and amazing, and a child is going to be a nuclear scientist and, an astronaut, and you're kind of going, I'll be really happy if my child's alive at the end of GCSE.
Yeah.
Yeah. Difficult.
What do you want to be when you grow up? I just want to be happy.
Yeah.
It's one of them. That's why I would strive for now. That's what I do strive for. I just want to be happy. That's what we all want to be.
Yeah, and I think it is also about parents having to maybe take a step back and recognize what's really important.
Yeah.
Because I think society, we're all kind of primed to go, oh, if your child gets into a really good school, gets really good grades, goes to university and does this, then it's perfect.
Yeah.
And suddenly being able to take a step back, which it's not a situation I would ever wish on any other parent or on myself again. But in some ways I feel lucky, weirdly, for the experience we've had, because I've learned so much.
Yeah.
And had to reevaluate what I considered was important, and our family did. And I think it's probably made us a closer family and, have a better understanding of what really adds value. And the journey isn't always linear, and it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well put. I think I always say this to the young mavericks. What they have, the gift that they have, it is a gift. You have it as well as parents, the gift of desperation, if you want to call it that. We have to go through, I think the lower the desperation, the greater the desperation, the greater the gift at the end of it, and that gift that you don't necessarily feel like you're in it sometimes, it's ongoing. It's a day-to-day, moment-to-moment reprieve of just striving to feel okay in this moment. And that's really hard to do. I think you touched on it, Liz, in this modern world of there's so much stuff going on. There's so many distractions, it's the tech world, without getting too into it. But, this all has relevance to why young people struggle so much, and why they do feel like they don't have the coordinates, because they, and is that a parent's fault? No, not so. I was, even back in my day, people were trying to give me the coordinates, but I was too distracted. And we didn't even have the internet back then. I wasn't paying attention for whatever reason. So, imagine how it is now, as how can people pay attention and receive the information that they actually need when there's so much stuff that's pulling them away from, what they actually need? You could be, feeding it to them all day long, but if they're not paying attention for whatever reason, is it because that's just the way they're wired, ADHD, etc., or is it just, the modern world, there's a lot of distractions? I think if you throw all of that into a mix, it makes sense to me why people struggle a lot.
Well, it's interesting. I just wanted to pick up on something that Liz has said earlier, which I think is a really valid point about the whole thing of the really difficult line between understanding that you were saying at the beginning, Liz, about where our children, when they're really struggling and they're really in this sort of pain, they're not choosing to be like that. They're not choosing these behaviors. They're not. So and the difficulty is that those behaviors can sometimes seem really manipulative, really unpleasant, really difficult, sometimes aggressive, very divisive. And, you can have this sort of feeling of, as a parent, should this be a question of discipline and punishment? And actually, are they just being really, where's that? And actually trying to understand what you were saying, Liz, but actually they're out of control. And this is, they're in pain, actually, underneath it all. And I think that's a really difficult line to tread, even, when they're in full addiction or not. Do you know what I mean? To understand where they need like a boundary, where they need that control to come in. Do you know what I mean? And that sort of, and I suppose that's part of, certainly being part of our recovery. And I find it still today, with our eldest son, when he's wanting to talk to us about stuff and he's very upset, and I can see the anxiety playing out, and whether I'm facilitating that anxiety in the way that I'm engaging with him or not. So I think, it goes on. It doesn't just stop just when the crisis is over. It's a constant learning for everybody, and our youngest son has lots of issues with school, has got some neurodiversity stuff. And again, it's like, is school a positive? Is school going to be a positive for this person? Or actually, is school just really, in the end, are the negatives going to be much more? So what do we open our minds to something completely different? And it's very frightening as a parent, because you don't want to have your child as a social experiment, but at the same time, you're trying to align in your heart and your instincts with them against all that information that's coming your way. And that could be cultural, societal. This is a way, that there is a best way, and they must achieve certain waypoints. It takes, which is why you need your village, because it's, you need your tribe, because everyone's walking the same path, frankly.
Yeah. Oh God. It's such a broad landscape to try and navigate. It really is, isn't it? Do you feel that you've out of everything you've experienced over the, I always say the madness and the solution, it's like back in the madness and now you're in the solution. Out of all that you've experienced collectively, I don't know if you feel compelled to share this. I'm going to dare to ask you, what is the lowlights, the highlights, what does stand out, for anyone that's listening, so, people might relate. I could share what mine are. For me, my low points are in the madness, when I just felt so confused. I don't think human words can really capture actually what I'm trying to describe. It's not actually a human, I can't articulate it. It's a feeling of just feeling, it's a gut-wrenching hopelessness of despair, confusion, and terror. I'm just, that's where I ended up, in that sort of, that feeling for a lot of my, throughout a lot of my journey, up to the point where I found a way out and started my own recovery. Do I ever feel that, did that just go away when I started to recover? For me, that was my experience. Yeah, there's been a couple of moments where I felt real fear, but it's rational. It's like when I've been jumped out of a plane skydiving or something. But for me, that my experience was, it went away because I replaced it with certain things, that helped me. Learned to meditate, and I got into went down a spiritual route a little bit and all of that. Did some good therapy, etc., etc. But the high points for me are just being present in my life, paying attention, turning up for myself, feeling connected to my true nature, my authenticity, having integrity, feeling the true joy of existence. I know it sounds really cheesy, but it's true. Just feeling love. Maybe to put it simply, I feel love today, and I love my life. And previously, I didn't feel love for whatever reason. For myself, I just didn't feel I had love for myself. Couldn't access it for whatever reason. And I couldn't connect to the joy of life because of it. If that makes sense. I can hear a cat meowing.
Yes. I think my cat has brought a mouse in, so we'll ignore her.
Oh no. Do you need to deal with it?
It's fine.
My cat brought a rabbit in through the cat flap. Anyway, deviating of track here. Get back on track. Right. So that's my version. I was just going to ask you guys, do you have your own sort of experience of that? I'm talking about, with what we're talking about, with the journey of the Mavericks, that you've had to try and, be part of their journey because you got caught up in it, obviously.
I'm happy to go. Gosh, I mean, when you were talking, Dave, I was thinking, isn't it funny? Because obviously you're talking from the perspective of someone who was going through it. And how, although at the time when you're in the crisis, you can seem to be in such polar positions, and yet really the feelings are all the same. So, I would say all of those as a parent, sometimes terror, fear for what will happen, what's going to happen to what is happening to us, how, and absolute helplessness, which produces more fear. Sometimes, feelings, terrible feelings of shame sometimes, of like, or sort of a guilt sometimes that would come in, like, where do we go? I mean, I don't think I felt actually, shame doesn't seem to resonate with me, but I think I felt guilt about, had we done, could we have done enough? Have we done enough? And it was this constant questioning. And I still have that today, by the way. And, it's what I've worked on that a lot, and I can really learn to let that go. Now, it's not a overriding, it's not a really difficult presence for me now, that sort of thing. But it can come up here and there with, could I have done something, or should I still be doing something different? These things can come up, and through everything I've learned, I can let that go a lot more easily and be much, find peace. And what you're talking about beforehand was very much, if anything has taught me how to live in the day, one day at a time, which those of you who know the sort of 12-step thing is one of the central things. And it is one of the central tenets to most spiritual, paths, one day at a time. And I really, especially with our little one now, with a sort of, we don't know what's happening one day to another, with whether the school is going to happen or not. But it's been an incredible journey for all of us to sort of to live like that, because actually that's really all there is, isn't there? You know what I mean? So I really appreciate the little things every day. I've had to let go of the sort of ego things, a lot of kind of career development or ideas or some of these things, that just sort of, because I know in my heart that actually if I was going to keel over tomorrow, go under a bus, I know that this is the decision I would most want to make. I want to be here for my kids, and they're, in their struggle, so whatever, and my family, and that's the core of everything, and actually, but within that, I am good at looking after myself. I am good at connecting with friends. I do the things that I love, which is my yoga or my walking and my, being with animals, pottery, whatever it's going to be. I'm good at that. So I'm good at, creating that. So I feel much richer for it all, which is amazing. And I feel a deeper peace, although of course at times, yes, it can really, but somehow now just like you were saying, I think we've all found our true north, and I trust that. There might be major, we might fall off the jetty a few times, sometimes deeper than others, but I know that we'll be able to get back up. So I think I feel that's I feel very grateful for that. I feel very grateful for the lessons, and I don't, of course I wouldn't want any of us or whatever to have been through the journey but I think people are given it for a reason. We're here for a reason. And like you say, we're meant to have had it, and I hope that we're doing as best we can with the experience we've had.
More than that. You're doing more than that. Thank you so much, Sacha, for sharing that. It's a very sort of personal, sacred thing that we're daring to, I'm well versed in it now. I've been doing it for so long, I can talk about the depths of my despair and kind of have a dissociation to it in a way, because it's just a story that once played out, but it's got such a powerful potency when you do share it with other people, because people can connect to that vulnerability, and it kind of encourages people to be vulnerable back, and that's a that's a truly profound thing. That's why we do what we do, right? Dom, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I look echo so much what Sacha says. I think in terms of the low points, of course, when you first become aware. I mean, Sacha's situation was different, obviously, with her son in particular. It was something that she was made aware of early on. Perhaps Liz would echo my experience, where it's revealed to you very suddenly, and essentially the floor falls away. You're left in this sort of darkness, this vacuum, and it's I mean, again, reiterating a little of what Sacha says, it's terrifying. You just in all your competent, I'm terribly clever, and I've managed to sort of grow up and have a job and a family and all the rest of it, and suddenly, boom, you're nobody. You're and of course you start looking around, and you look at the child first of all, then you look at yourself, and you look at your spouse, and you look at the school, and of course there's a little bit of, well, who am I blaming here? Who's done what wrong? And again, reiterating the sense of guilt that Sacha alluded to, that for me it was that moment when I suddenly became aware of the scale of the problem that we were confronted with. That was horrific. And then, of course, conversely, that there's nothing like the joy years later, I have to say, of one's son finally, for whatever reason, decided to confide in you or ask you a question, or yes, I mean, ask a question of you. I mean, as if he actually wants your advice for once. I mean, shock, but celebration. I have to say, it doesn't happen very often. But anyway, I mean, it happened once, and that was it. All I'd add is that first dreadful moment, the scab over that wound is still pretty thin, and I'm aware of it. My wife still, I think it's even thinner. She's still every little thing. Our son arriving half an hour later than he was going to. Oh my God, he's down the pub getting pissed. No, so much. But we're all capable of this, and then my scab is thin too, and I'm panicking underneath quite a bit on occasion. They remain vulnerable. The recovery is a long one, and possibly lifelong. As parents, it's the same for us. We will be living with this for a very long time.
Yeah. Thanks, Dom. Just quickly before I come to you, Liz, this is why it's fresh in my mind. I just want to say that what I've learned over the time that I've been in my own personal journey of self-development and interacting with other people, and seeing their journey separate to mine, but me helping with that a little bit or whatever, just observing other people. There is no, like it's already been said, there is no, it's like the healing, grieving process. There's no time scale, right or wrong. Everyone's on their separate journeys, and it just takes as long as it takes. And I think the most important thing is what's already been said, Sacha, just for today. Just today, I'm going to wake up, and for myself, to the best of my ability, I'm going to be the best version of myself, and do all I can to be that. And if I can help some people along the way as well, that's an added bonus. I'm not always going to get it right. I still fuck up sometimes, but there's no major consequence to that ever, really, because I can catch myself. I'm just more skillful, more present, more conscientious. Not perfect by any measure. And it's just a daily reprieve of that, moment to moment. And I think just if you can get to a point as a parent, or the Mavericks find this hard because they're young and they're in that egoic coming of age stage of like they still think they know better. Little shits. But
They know everything.
yeah, of course. I knew everything. You know, yeah, I know. No, you don't. But yeah, it's slightly harder for them because, you know, that's where they're at in that age. And, you know, we have the luxury of lived experience, life experience, us elders. You know, we're just a little bit more adept at getting knocked down occasionally here and there. We're used to it. We've had more of it. And we're just a bit tougher, you know, in that regard, in my opinion. So the younger lot are always going to find it a little bit hard just to keep it in the moment because they feel like they've got no time to prove themselves. They've got to do it all now. Patience is a virtue, as they say, right? And that's what we have as elders. We have more patience, I think. Anyway, can't remember why I started saying that, but I said it for a reason. I don't know. I just went right off on one. Liz, coming back to you. Go on.
Right. I guess, yeah, if we're looking at low points and high points, probably I do actually remember my lowest point, and that was when it first came to light, and we ended up in A&E with our son kind of at 2 a.m. on a Sunday morning, where he had kind of technically tried to take his own life for the second time in a week. And having spent 4 hours in A&E, having had no sleep, being told to go home, someone from the crisis team would call you within 48 hours, which they did. But basically, it was like, there's nothing we can do. We'll send you home. However, we would suggest you, move the sharp, hide the medication, and look out for ligature points.
Bloody hell.
And it was just terrifying. And I don't think I slept for a week practically unless I had somebody else watching my son. And I think it is that sense of utter confusion as to how we got there. How did it happen? And as Sacha said, the guilt as to why didn't we see it?
Mm.
So I would say that was definitely a real low point. And when I look at how far we've all come, I think as parents, as a family, it's suddenly a kind of having that gratitude and recognizing and appreciating that we have all learned a lot, and almost, you know, acknowledging and celebrating the wins for our children. And it doesn't matter how small they are.
Yeah.
And you kind of do learn to recognize that in your children and and taking that step back and kind of as a parent, not always having to say, oh, you could do better, you could try harder.
Yeah.
It's like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay for all of us. You know, we can always do better. We can always learn more. We can always try harder. But actually, you know, just live in the now, which is really what Sacha and Dom have both said, and appreciate what you have got.
Yeah. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, all of you, for sharing. You know, like I keep saying, this is we're more not experienced. We're more versed in well versed in sharing this stuff because this is what we thrive and the space that we found ourselves in. This is what we're encouraged to do, is to, you know, express ourselves. And I think that's the problem we have with you know, the getting to this point, you know, is that sense that we don't have a voice, we can't share this stuff. It's so vital we do that. Dom, I just wanted to touch on the dad thing, because I did a lot of work in schools, and we used to do these parent evenings. It's quite some time ago. And we'd turn up to do, like, you know, I'd share my life experience with a load of parents at parents' evening. And they knew that that was what was going to happen. And we were going to discuss things around like body image, you know, risk taking, peer pressure, low self-esteem, you know, issues around substance misuse, loads of stuff, all of the stuff under the umbrella of mental health, whatever. And it was predominantly, I'd say, 99.9% mums. It just was the way it was. And this was going back 10 years plus, maybe. So it was a long time ago. So obviously we're in a different space now where I think more dads would turn up. I really believe that. How do you see it?
Well, it's a question, actually. I mean, you could just as well direct to Liz and Sacha as from the point of view of, here we are. We've sent out an invitation to a plethora of people to join in with whatever we're offering.
Mm-hmm.
The meetings, as I said earlier, are predominantly, as you described your one 10 years ago. I mean, I would say it's got to be, I mean, what, a maximum of 10% is men turning up. Yeah. I'm not going to offer an opinion as to why that's the case. When we decided to start the men's group, it wasn't with an idea at all of some sort of concrete understanding of why that happens. It was just, well, let's try something else. Let's see if for whatever reason, without any judgment, some guys decide they'd rather just be in the room with another whole bunch of guys. So I don't know what to say, Dave, about that, except that it hasn't. I mean, it's still a prevalent theme, I think. But I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, Liz, actually, you've got husbands. I mean, the both parents will be entirely immersed, I think, in these episodes. How they choose to seek help or some form of support, obviously, guys do it differently, if at all. I mean, maybe they're not getting support. Maybe they're not looking for it. Maybe they feel they don't need it. Who knows? I steer well clear myself of trying to judge why that might be the case. But
yeah, no, that's wise. I feel
it seems still to be the case.
Yeah, that's what I've observed.
But it's in looking for support that the difference lies. I don't think it necessarily lies in the involvement in the children's lives and
no, I agree.
hurt and all the rest of it that they all feel, and the guilt and the confusion and frustration.
I just think that, and I will share because I'm gonna, and it's my opinion, and I'm entitled to that, so I'm gonna share it. Is that I just think that unless we, it's not like we don't want to. I think a lot of us guys, we really want to, like, express ourselves in a certain way and participate in a certain way in certain areas of our lives. But until I learned how to feel safe and do it in a space, I was one of them. I ain't talking about that. No chance. Ain't happening. Right. And especially in this culture of, it's not just England, but culturally, Winston Churchill style, make a cup of tea, battle on. You know what I mean? So I think it's just ingrained in us, and that's no one's fault. It's not our fault. It's just the way it is. It's the message that we've received, which is, we crack on. It's the commando style SAS. We're unbreakable. We're tough guys, man, and we do things in a certain way, and that's okay. It's not anyone's fault. We've got tough shells. It's a British thing, and I don't think it's just exclusive to Britain. But that's just the way I see it. It doesn't mean it's right, but it's just the way I see it. And that's my experience myself. So until I learned to get vulnerable, basically, which I believe we all are, all humans, makes sense that all humans get vulnerable, right? It's not like there's no human that doesn't get vulnerable. It's impossible.
Yeah, and I would like to interject. I mean, I again, expressing my opinion, but I think it's fantastic. I mean, I was so pleased when Dom, was one of the parents who was up for coming on board. We were all prepared to do this together, because I think it's great to have a dad, engage, as a kind of figurehead as part of it, because it has probably encouraged some men to come who might not have done in the first place, to have him as an example. And I think a lot of men are really struggling, but really don't know how to reach out. And it's not in their culture. It's not what they do. They're supposed to not be, it's not whatever. It's not manly. It's not, they're embarrassed. And I think it can cause real issues sometimes because they're not searching for their own, sometimes they get stuck in the part of the family recovery process because they're still, then they haven't been open to it. And, not because often their intention isn't they want to, but from the culture and the societal expectation, they stay stuck behind the wall.
Yeah.
So, I think, as you say, culture is changing, society is changing, more men are out there. There's so many more programs for male kind of development and everything else. There's lots more great male role models out there. And I think, that's all a good thing.
Yeah. It's brilliant. Well done, Sacha. I just want to put it out there now, and we'll close it up in a minute. I want to put it out there now and say, if anyone finds, if you are a guy, for me, I didn't trust vulnerability. We're taught, don't be such a pussy. Sorry to use that term, but it's, I'm sure anyone can understand what I'm saying. What's wrong with you? Get a grip, mate. Vulnerability is a weakness, and if you show that vulnerability, you've had it, especially at school or just out there in life, and didn't get me anywhere. That got me to a place where I wanted to kill myself because I bottled up all of what I could not express, didn't feel I could express it. So that got me to a point where I secretly was planning my own funeral. Every night, secretly, I was thinking that because that's where that got me, that mentality. And then what I learned to do, it was a guy, Tony. I always say it. Hello, Tony. He was the first guy that taught me how to be vulnerable properly and share vulnerability and show me that it was actually a fucking strength. That vulnerability, like I was seeing him get vulnerable, but he was so strong with it. Because he had such conviction and confidence in the way he was being vulnerable. I'm not talking about crying, although that's okay. It was just him sharing his vulnerability. And that connected to my vulnerability. And I was like, wow, there's some strength in this guy. This guy is strong. And I wanted it. I wanted to be like him. So I started to dare to share my vulnerability. So that's the message I'm putting out, is if anyone's listening to this, I'm not saying share your vulnerability with some twat who's just going to use that against you. And you know what I mean? You got to be a little bit discerning with this stuff, get on We Thrive and fucking connect to Dom,
Sorry, I thought you were saying I was the twat.
No, Dom. No, you're not. No.
Welcome, Dom.
You are. You are. You're an inspiration to all guys. You are, Dom, because you're daring to step up into a position of vulnerability to say, look, I don't have all the answers. And to a guy, that's a big one, because guys find it really hard because they've got a big fucking pride badge to wear, that they feel they've got all the answers.
Very pleased to be able to say I readily admit that I don't have all the answers.
Yeah, exactly. And the minute you can just freaking well admit that, then you can start to step into, having the answers. So anyway, got that off my chest. Anyway, I want to end it. I feel like we've said what we needed to say. I'm mindful of the time because you've given your time so generously. I know you're all very busy in your lives. So to end on this, We Thrive. I think everyone's got a good sense of what it is and what's there waiting for people if they choose to reach out, if they feel they need that support. It's online, right? No physical meetings.
mostly online. Yeah, at the moment that may change, and we sometimes have the odd in-person meetup in London. So that all that information comes out through monthly newsletters on our WhatsApp group and things like that. So, but at the moment, mostly online, because we have families who come in from sometimes abroad, all over the UK. And just to say, it's for families who, are struggling with a child who is experiencing behavioral, emotional, sort of anything like that, and mental challenges that just feel to a parent like, we're just not unsure, we're feeling uncomfortable. We don't know, it's not, we're not focusing particularly on addictions or anything, it is that, and usually does seem to be a strong commonality of a basis of some sort of neurodiversity, sometimes some combination of mental health, and that can manifest in self-harming, sometimes or in, eating disorders, social school refusals, substance abuse, so it's a mixture of things. So it's a community of parents who've experienced lots of these different things, but at the heart of it is families who just, want to find a way through together out of, a position of pain.
Yeah, it's like getting a group hug.
That's it. That's it.
Safety in numbers. You're not
Safety in
alone.
numbers.
Yeah. Okay, great, man. Has anyone got anything they want to add to that, or do you feel like we've covered it all? Anyone? We good?
I think we're good.
I think we're
Cool.
good.
Okay, well, look, I'm going to put a link to wethrive.org.uk.
We-thrive.
We-thrive. I'll put the link on anyway.
Perfect.
And it's discretion, right?
Yeah, totally anonymous.
Yeah.
Totally
Yeah.
confidential.
Okay, so it's a safe space where people can reach out. If you feel like you're struggling, just get in touch, ping them a message. Someone will pick that up and connect you in, and start your journey, man. If you're struggling, scary, isn't it, to start it? Really is. That's the hardest. The hardest part. I always say it, the toughest layer is the denial that there's a problem. Once you can step through that and ask for help, you can start your journey.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Liz, Dom, Sacha, thank you so much for coming on. It's been really, great. Always good seeing you guys. I'll see you in London face to face soon.
Yeah.
Always.
100%. Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dave.
Yeah, well, look, you're doing amazing stuff. I'm a massive champion of what you're doing. You're champions in your own right. So, I salute you. It's amazing. And keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks, Dave. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
See you later. Bye.